Before the printing press, before the world could read freely, there were whispers of books that were never meant to be written. They said these texts were cursed, that the words themselves carried rot, that to even read them was to invite damnation. But the truth is far darker, for what the church called forbidden was often just knowledge too dangerous for power to control. In the shadowed heart of medieval Europe, hidden behind monasteries and cathedrals, there existed a network of libraries, not of faith, but of fear. Inside them lay texts written in blood, inked by heretics, scholars, alchemists, and priests who had lost their faith. They called it the Bibliotheca Obscura, the Library of the Damned. And though history tried to erase it, the fire could never burn everything. It began with a single man, a monk named Brother Armand, keeper of the scriptorium in a remote abbey near Avignon. He was a man of devotion and discipline, but also of curiosity. And curiosity in that age was a sin. His duty was to copy holy texts, parchment after parchment, the same prayers, the same verses, day after day. But one night, as the candlelight flickered and the rain clawed at the windows, a traveler arrived at the gates. The man wore a tattered cloak, his eyes hollow, his hands clutching a bundle wrapped in oilskin. He collapsed at the monk's feet, whispering only, "Hide it. For God's sake, hide it." When Armand unwrapped the bundle, he found a book unlike any he had ever seen. It was bound in blackened leather, the letters carved by hand, not Latin, not Greek, but something older, something that felt alive. On the first page, written in crimson ink, was a single sentence. "This is the word before the word, the knowledge that heaven denied." Armand should have burned it. Instead, he read it. The book spoke of creation before Genesis, of a world shaped not by God, but by thought, that every idea was a seed of power, every name a spell. It described angels who rebelled not out of pride, but out of reason, and men who learned their language and were punished for it. Armand began to write what he read, to translate, to understand. But soon others noticed the change in him. He no longer prayed, he no longer slept. He wrote for days without stopping, as though the book itself was whispering through him. And then, one morning, the other monks found him gone. His chamber, empty. The mysterious book, missing. All that remained were pages scattered across his desk, filled with strange drawings, circles within circles, eyes without faces, and a phrase written again and again. Knowledge is the first sin. The church declared the manuscript heretical, but the infection had already spread. Copies began to appear in other abbeys, hidden between psalms disguised as commentaries. Some said a secret order of monks called Custodes Umbrae, keepers of the shadow, was preserving what others destroyed. They believed that knowledge was divine, not demonic. That truth, no matter how blasphemous, was sacred. So they began to collect, from burned villages, from tombs, from the ruins of Alexandria, from the scrolls smuggled out of Baghdad's House of Wisdom. They gathered everything. The writings of alchemists who spoke of turning not lead to gold, but man into God. The experiments of healers who dissected corpses when it was forbidden to touch the dead. The Gospels that named Christ not as Savior, but as teacher and mortal. Every book they saved, they sealed in silence. Every secret they uncovered, they paid for in blood. It is said that by the 13th century, the Library of the Damned had grown vast, hidden beneath a monastery in Bohemia, its entrance disguised as a crypt. There, beneath the earth, torches burned beside shelves of forbidden parchment. The monks spoke only in whispers, fearing the Inquisition's spies. They wore hoods marked with a single symbol, a serpent devouring its tail. And at the center of the library stood a single relic, the Codex Tenebris, the Book of Darkness. Legend says it was written by a fallen angel in the language of heaven before the fall, that its pages could reveal the face of God or erase the soul of the reader. None who read it twice lived to speak of it, but the church was not blind. The Inquisition had begun to turn its gaze from witches and heretics to scholars. One by one, libraries went up in flames. The flames of truth, they called them. Thousands of manuscripts, centuries of knowledge, turned to ash. But still rumors persisted, that in the fires, monks had carried books hidden beneath their robes, that in the mountains of the Carpathians, a secret monastery still guarded what could not be destroyed. In 1312, an inquisitor named Bernard de Langres claimed he had found it. He rode for days into the wilderness, through forests that whispered in dead languages, until he reached a valley untouched by light. There he found the ruins of a monastery, black stone, ancient symbols carved into the archway, and at its center a sealed door. He ordered it broken down. Behind it he found shelves of manuscripts, scrolls bound in human hair, books that bled when opened. And in the dust a single voice, and faint, desperate, whispered from the dark, "Some truths should never be remembered." Bernard left no record of what he saw inside, only a final note in his journal. "The light of God cannot reach this place." A week later he was found dead, burned from within, his heart turned to ash. The church sealed the valley, declared it cursed. But centuries later, Napoleon's soldiers, digging for treasure, found fragments. Pages wrapped in lead, untouched by time. They spoke of stars as living beings, of the human soul as a reflection of the cosmos, and of the divine name, a sound that could unmake the world. Those pages were taken, studied, hidden again. Some say they rest now in the Vatican's secret archives, under the category Index Librorum Prohibitorum. But others believe the Library of the Damned was never destroyed, that it moves on like a ghost and from place to place, guarded by those who still believe that truth is not holy nor evil, but eternal. And perhaps if you walk alone through an ancient monastery at night, if you hear the echo of turning pages when no one is there, you've come close to it, the library that never dies, the one that still remembers everything humanity tried to forget. They say history is written by the victors, but the truth, the real truth, hides with those who lost everything to protect it. The church believed it had destroyed the library of the damned, but they were wrong, because some knowledge refuses to die. For centuries, the story faded into myth. The world moved on through plagues, wars, and revolutions. The monks who once copied forbidden texts were replaced by scientists, philosophers, and dreamers. But in the forgotten corners of Europe, rumors remained. Travelers spoke of a monastery in the mountains of Romania, its windows sealed, its bells silent. A place where time did not move, and where the walls were carved with words no living tongue could read. In 1823, a young historian named Gregor Weiss set out to find it. He was not a priest nor a skeptic, but something in between, a man torn between faith and reason. Weiss had spent years studying records banned by the Vatican, fragments that hinted at a surviving order of Custodes Umbrae, the last guardians of the forbidden library. His colleagues called him mad. But one of them, an old Jesuit named Father Clemens, told him quietly, "If you go looking for the library, it will find you first." Weiss began his journey in winter. For weeks he traveled through villages where even priests refused to speak of the old abbeys. At last he reached the edge of the Carpathians, a wall of black pines rising into endless snow. The locals warned him away. They said no bird flew there, no fire stayed lit, and no man returned the same. But Weiss pressed on. The forest seemed alive, the trees whispering, the wind carrying voices. He followed the ruins of an old road until he saw it, a monastery of crumbling stone, half buried in frost, its great doors chained shut with iron. And carved above the entrance were 3 Latin words, Veritas Ultima Silentium, the final silence of truth. Inside, the air was thick with dust and centuries of decay. Cobwebs hung like veils, and strange symbols were painted on the walls in soot. He found no monks, no signs of life, only rows of bookshelves, and beneath them, tunnels descending into the dark. And there, deep below, Weiss found something impossible. The library still stood. Thousands of manuscripts lay preserved in glass, untouched by time. The air hummed faintly, as if the books themselves breathed, and at the center of it all stood a single figure, cloaked, unmoving. When Weiss called out, the figure turned. An old man's face, thin as parchment, eyes clouded white. "I am the keeper," he said. "The last." The man led Weiss deeper into the vaults, past texts written in 1,000 forgotten tongues. Phoenician, Aramaic, Sumerian, languages no scholar had seen since Babel. "These are the fragments of what the world once knew," said the keeper, "before kings made gods, before the church made truth." Weiss asked, "Why hide them?" The old man smiled faintly. "Because knowledge is power, and power invites fear. The church burned what it could not understand, and worshipped what it feared most." He stopped before a sealed chamber of stone. On it, a symbol of a serpent devouring its tail, the mark of the custodes umbrae. "Inside," the keeper whispered, "lies the heart of the library." Weiss felt the air grow colder as the door opened. Within stood a pedestal of obsidian, and upon it a single book, the Codex Tenebris. Its pages shimmered like oil in the candlelight, the words shifting and alive. When Weiss touched it, the room seemed to shudder. He saw flashes, the burning of Alexandria, monks hiding scrolls beneath their robes, a demon whispering in a scholar's ear, an angel weeping over a broken tower, and a voice, neither human nor divine, spoke inside his mind. The mind that seeks all knowledge must also bear all burden. Weiss fell to his knees. The keeper knelt beside him. "Now you understand," he said softly. "This is not just a library. It is memory itself, the soul of the world." But the peace did not last. Weiss was not the only one searching. For months, the Vatican's agents had followed his trail, men of the Holy Office, sent to retrieve the relics and silence all who knew of them. That night, the monastery shook with thunder, not from heaven, but from gunfire. The keeper stood in the doorway, chanting in a language older than Latin. Weiss tried to help, but the old man only said, "Go, take one page, and remember." And as the soldiers broke through, the keeper turned to face them, unarmed. The fire came fast, shelves toppled, flames devoured parchment older than empires. Weiss fled through the tunnels, clutching a single torn page, glowing faintly in his hands. When he looked back, the monastery was burning, and above the flames, he thought he saw shapes, not angels, not demons, but shadows, watching. Weiss never spoke publicly again. He returned to Vienna, locked the page away, and fell into silence. But before he died, he left a note. "The library still lives. Wherever knowledge is forbidden, it will find shelter. The fire cannot kill memory. No one knows what became of the page. Some say it was taken to the Vatican's secret archives. Others claim it surfaced during the Second World War, found by occult researchers in the ruins of a monastery. And there are whispers, faint, persistent, that a fragment rests today in a private collection in Prague. Every century, someone rediscovers the legend. A scholar, a dreamer, a fool. And every time the world seems to shudder, as if the library stirs in its sleep. Some believe it is not just a place, but an idea. A living archive that moves where it is needed. A consciousness bound to knowledge itself. Others believe it was never real at all. Just a story, told by those who dared to imagine that truth might be stronger than power. But maybe that's what makes it dangerous. Because even a story can be a kind of spell. And the moment you speak it, the library hears you. So the next time you pass a library, a church, or an old university, look closer. If you feel the air hum behind the walls, if you hear the sound of turning pages where no one stands, you might just be closer than you think. The library of the damned still remembers. It is waiting, and it never forgets those who seek it.